So according to a recent study, the alcohol bans during the lockdown led to a significant decrease in the number of violent deaths in South Africa. Experts say alcohol has been proven to play a fundamental role in various kinds of violence, including attempted murder and gender-based violence. However, it is not the direct cause. So let's unpack the findings from this study. We're joined by Stellenbosch University criminologist Dr. Guy Lamb. We're also in conversation with Sidwell Sehoana from the Agisanang Domestic Abuse Prevention and Training Organizations. To both of our guests, thanks very much indeed for your time. Sidwell, I want to kick off the discussion with you this morning because there is such a big discrepancy in these findings between men and women. Why is that?
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I think, the findings, they clearly spells out that, alcohol plays a very huge role in terms of contributing to issues of gender-based violence. When you look at the number of incidents that are taking place, majority of those particular incidents, and especially in intimate partner violence, they tend to be influenced by alcohol. 45% of men who involve in intimate partner violence. There's a link. There's a direct link between the alcohol and the abuse that they are perpetuating. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge that I strongly believe that, Michelle, it really needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed to a point where we are able to ensure that we engage relevant people. Liquor board, SABC, they must play a very huge role in terms of ensuring that such issues tend to be addressed.
Yeah.
And at the same time, must also ensure that community members, they are well empowered. And we are able to ensure that we address behavioral issues that are taking place. Because yes, we know and we've been seeing that alcohol plays a very huge role, but at the same time must also understand that we are reflecting around behavioral issues. How do we start preaching responsible drinking? And how do we ensure that community members, and especially men, because they're the most people that are actually consuming alcohol, and the issue of party tend to come out very strong, where we find and see a number of cases being, perpetuated by majority of men being influenced by alcohol.
Right, right. And
by this, as we speak. But I strongly believe that there's something that's happening now.
Yeah. Dr. Guy Lamb, it's interesting because, Lisa Vetten, who is a well-known researcher around issues related to gender-based violence, she's also looked very closely at the findings of this report. And one of the things that it says is that when you aggregate the findings by gender, the numbers look just slightly differently. So the statistics have dropped, yes. For example, the number of people who were killed during that period over a week dropped by 14%. That was 120 fewer deaths over the period of 1 week in South Africa when we had the lockdown. But what's interesting when you look at it according to gender is that, yes, the number of men being admitted in hospitals decreased in that time, but what that also meant was that the number of women being admitted actually increased.
Yeah, I mean, those findings are really interesting. I'm not sure what sort of response you'd like me to give to that, but it really kind of spoke to, what a restriction on alcohol access was, because certainly there was a formal ban on being able to purchase alcohol, but of course alcohol was still available through illegal and unlawful means. So I'm not sure what sort of response you'd like me to give to that particular statement.
Well, I suppose the parallels that are being drawn is if we're talking about alcohol being at least part of some of the challenges we see in society insofar as gender-based violence is concerned, let's say we take it out of the equation, and yes, fewer men are admitted to hospital. What that means is that there are more men at home.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of, if one wants to try and unpack this and really sort of speculate on what those findings are about. I mean, what the alcohol ban, it was an alcohol ban combined, obviously, with ban on social gatherings. So most violence often happens in the context of social context. If we're looking at alcohol, most sort of murders, attempted murders, it's perpetrated by men, and in many cases against other men. In domestic violence situations, it's against intimate partners or other women. And the sort of situation around lockdown is you didn't have as many social gatherings. So the kind of context of drinking changed. Right. So you saw, as we know, from anecdotal evidence and other studies that there were increases in domestic violence. So, of course, men are drinking at home, but it's not only men, it's, men and women are drinking at home. And we know from what studies have been done is that often alcohol intensifies conflict and conflictual relationships, and those agreements then escalate towards violence. So I think what it does expose was the context of drinking changed, and because of the context of drinking changing, we did see an increase in women being affected by violence that was linked to excessive drinking and misuse of alcohol.
Sidwell, in the wake of this kind of research, there are a number of organizations that are calling for, just given the sort of improvements we've seen, let's say, in particular segments of society, for example, the number of people admitted in trauma in hospital, there have been calls now for more regulation insofar as alcohol consumption is concerned. What might that look like, though?
No, absolutely. Allow me to say, I know a community of Alexander, they've, embarked on a program that they call prosecution. It's community prosecution, where, they go and ensure that they check the compliance of, taverns and shabin that we have within the community of Alexander. And those that are not complying, what they will do is to ensure that they close them, and that tend to take place, with, a collaboration of community members, collaboration of, government, department, just to ensure that such issues tend to be, implemented. But at the same time, we really need to ensure that we tap into the legal board SAB, just to ensure that we intensify, some of the, regulations that are there, just to ensure that, duty bearers, they are able to respond directly and effectively to those, regulations that are there. You can sit and think about number of inspectors that we have within our, province or the entire country. It's really shocking. The community of Alexander, that it's a community that, it's allocated 800 hectares. And when you sit and look at number of taverns that are there, you have more than 400 taverns with only one inspector. How are we going to ensure that, the compliance, the regulation tends to be followed by liquor traders effectively so? So one of the things that we are working on is to ensure that we capacitate, tavern owners. We have sessions with them just to ensure that we are able to look at issues of policies. We are able to look at how best are we going to ensure that we even engage, those who are supposed to enforce the law, so that we can be able to ensure that we see the difference. Because these are some of the issues that affect many members. They are seeing number of, domestic taking place, number of femicide taking place, being influenced by we are saying, how do we start promoting responsible drinking, and how do we ensure that those taverns, those shabins, they are able to comply. They sell food, they sell water. When someone comes who is intoxicated, they are not supposed to sell that particular person alcohol. How do we push and ensure that we are able to live in a society where we are able to see all those regulations being enforced? And working very closely with different structures. I know one of the structures that is very, present and very effective in terms of, addressing these particular issues. So CPF, Community Policing Forum, they are playing a very huge role in terms of going and trying to ensure that they check. And that is one of the structures that works very closely with SAPS. This is a structure that comes, with that particular relationship in ensuring that these enforcement tend to take place. But at the same time, Michelle, allow me to say, we are dealing with behavioral issues.
No, please finish your thoughts.
Yes, Michelle?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying at the same time, we also need to understand we're dealing with, behavioral issues. How do we start, engaging men for them to be in a space where they are able to understand and learn, ways of addressing issues? Because some they will resort to, they will leave the home knowing that, we are not in a good space. We are not seeing things eye to eye. They go and consume alcohol, then they come back, because of that adrenaline. That's when they will start, perpetuating issues of GBV. But how do we, position men where we are able to teach them to be in a space where they are able to develop a different mechanism for them to be able to, deal and address issues in a manner that is effective? Yeah. Those are some of the things that we are looking at when we go to taverns, engaging men, engaging tavern owners, and engaging community at large.
Dr. Guy Lam, your final comments insofar as regulation of the industry is concerned. Sidwell's already mentioned a number of interventions in Alexandra, for example, insofar as illegal taverns and taverns are concerned. What's your take on it?
Yeah, this is a common problem throughout South Africa, and of course, there's different communities with different drinking behaviors, and of course, it's from wealthy through to the poorest of the poor. Alcohol is widely consumed. Of course, there's a large population of those who do not drink as well. But I think in responding to this, there's obviously the enforcement of the regulations and looking at community resources to do it in areas where we see very high levels of gender-based violence and alcohol-related interpersonal violence. So using the kind of mechanisms that are there, such as this community police forum, such as neighborhood watches. We've had some quite good studies done within the Western Cape which have shown that neighborhood watches can do this, but of course they need to be incentivized. And I think there's a very important component here. It's about working with tavern owners and shebeen owners to try and make the spaces safer. Look for ways to incentivize it, because what we tend to do is tend to force regulations on them, force compliance on them, send in law enforcement, send in SAPs, and it's also an income generator for many of these communities. So one needs to try and find this balance, find a way that promotes this kind of responsible drinking, find ways, as Sidwell has spoken about, to try and address norms, particularly masculine norms of violence. So it's about also working with those who have businesses around there, because in their interest, they don't want to be running a business that promotes violence. So I think it's about working with all the different stakeholders to find a workable solution, because banning alcohol outright in South Africa is not a practical solution at the moment, and we have to find other ways of trying to improve responsible drinking and reduce the violence that's associated with it.
Dr. Guy Lamb is a criminologist with Stellenbosch University. Sidwell Sehoana is from Agisanang, Domestic Abuse Prevention and Training. To both of our guests, thanks very much indeed for weighing in on what is an incredibly important and topical issue in our country. I wonder what your take is. You can tweet us at Newzroom 405.